You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
You need to say it in French, though.
Oh, yeah. Right now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so in English it's a trip to the moon, but in French it's le voyage dans la lune. So.
I'm just going to have you on for 45 minutes, and I'm going to give you phrases to say in French. People don't know.
You know what's fun is, what's fun in French when speaking about the moon is we say dans la lune, which doesn't translate to on the moon or to the moon. It translates to in the moon.
That sounds like a French thing to do. All due respect. How did it end up in the moon?
Moon. Like when you're kind of daydreaming or zoning out in French, you say "Je suis dans la lune." I'm in the moon. That's how you describe. You're in the moon. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always liked that. I'm like, oh, I'm in the moon. So if you say that in English, people will be like, what?
I get confused on those things because like in French you would call it the apple of the earth, but I want to know why the apple is not called the potato of the sky.
Oh yeah. Right.
These are the things that maybe you or I could
or counting in French, 20, like 10, 20, 42 or whatever. I don't remember what I can't think of the translation right now, but when you get to the upper numbers, it just gets weird because they're just naming like all the numbers that are in the number. Like you don't say 94, you say like 4, 20, 10, 90.
All right, do people, when they count in French, give up at a certain number?
I think the non-natives, yeah. I think they do.
Like 9's about good.
When they get to like 50, they're like, hey, we're done here. That's all I need.
That's awesome. This is Ken Vellante with the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast, and we have Melissa Oliveri, who is a friend, podcaster, creator, musician under Cannelle, the Skylark Bell, which is a beautiful, well-loved podcast. Melissa, happy to have you on Something Rather Than Nothing.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
We are thinking about podcast and talking music and stuff, but one of the things is lately the show's been on a jag, or maybe it's always been on a jag with live performance, music. It's really, for me, doing the podcast, a sweet thing to hear songs, to hear the people that create them. And so I've had a lot of singer-songwriters. And as you know, I love the work that you do. I also am in touch with some of your influences in songwriting. I think I like Polly Jean Harvey and Tori Amos and that. I've been excited to see that you got like a live show coming up and we're talking music off the bat. So what's going on with Cannelle and performing in that kind of development of your music?
Yeah, it's terrifying and exciting at the same time. I haven't played live in front of a live audience in the same room as me in over 15 years. So it's kind of a big deal. It's a small venue, and I'll be with two other really amazing local women musicians, Katie Tessman and Annie Enneking, and they're both wonderful. And so I was invited to join them for this, and I'm really excited. I'm scared, not gonna lie, but it's gonna be fine. And it's just giving me a whole new kind of angle to look at my songs and really be more mindful about selecting not only what I hope the audience likes. Now I'm going to be playing in front of people who've never heard me. Whereas when I live stream on Instagram, for example, all those people who are following me, they know what to expect. So it's easy,
Sure.
And if I mess up, we laugh and it's like just between friends almost. But now it's a room full of strangers who may or may not be there for me. A lot of them are going to be there for those other two more seasoned performers. And so I have to think about, okay, how am I going to charm them? And so it's been really great. And I've had to, we get to pick a few covers, and I picked a Regina Spektor song and a Kate Bush song, of course. And but then the third, I picked a French Canadian, really obscure. Nobody will know this song in the room, but I felt like it was important if I was going to introduce myself to these folks.
Oh yeah.
To include that, which is such a huge part of who I am and not very apparent here in America where I speak English all the time, but that French Canadian culture. And so I'm hoping to share that and maybe spark something with them.
Yeah, the French American culture, and one of the things listeners might not know is that from my background, I have ancestry from Quebec, and on my mom's side, and my grandmother, my Nana, spoke French. Like I could hear her speak French. That close to it.
Yeah.
And growing up in New England, in particular area that I did, these were French towns, like French American towns, with the language in the newspaper being in French and the language on the street being French. So I've always had a strong connection to Montreal and the connection of these cultures. So I mean, even when we first met, there were some components there that I just had a lived experience that a lot of people don't have necessarily around that.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to connect with you in that type of way, even on this simple inflection of moving between English and French, like my Nana could or would, is just like, oh, that's fun. And I think you're the special correspondent for the podcast. If I need a French word pronounced, I know you send that. Wait, let me try it. La saucière.
Yeah. Oh yes, good. See,
all right. That was a song title. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. I was wondering why you needed that, and then
I didn't expect to, but the band, the doom metal band Faytooth had La Saucière.
Yes. That's awesome. That's perfection right there. Yeah, I don't think that United States America realizes how heavily the influence and the connections were with the French, even on not just in Canada, I mean in America too. Yeah, there's a huge history there. Even here in Minnesota, I mean, Lake Mille Lacs is French for 1,000 lakes. Grand Marais means big swamp. It just goes, Eau Claire means clear water. These are all French names. The motto for Minnesota is L'Étoile du Nord, the North Star. But the motto is in French here. And yet all we hear about is
the North Star comes from. Okay.
Yeah, see? But we hear a lot about, in Minnesota, the Scandinavian heritage, and yet so many of the place names are obviously Native American, but there's a lot of French too. So yeah, it's just interesting that, and a little bit sad maybe that history has been kind of lost, but it's the signs of it are still there.
Yeah, one of my favorite, I might have told you this before, just I adore Leonard Cohen as a writer and as a spiritual being that he was. Complicated dude. But I love, even his songs of moving between the French and the English. There's just something so satisfying for my soul to hear that, moving back and forth. Oh, it's the same and it sounds so different this way. And he did that a few times. And of course, being heavily influenced by Jack Kerouac, not so much as the overt use of French maybe all the time, but of Canadian French culture. So, big show. You got that big show coming up. Great, good luck with that. I know it's a big deal. Let's be straight. I know it's a big deal for you to.
It's a big deal for me.
But I know what I can see and what I know with you is that you just go back to the point that you need to. I see that. You laugh even though I know your brain is saying that was imperfect.
Yeah, in very different words than that we won't say here on air, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
But then you just got to dive back in,
So, now the other thing is, I've shared from the Something Rather Than Nothing Instagram page. Skylark Bell, which I've told you before. You're writing the voice that does it, the musical accompaniment, and the sounds, and honestly, the ghostly atmosphere, the passage of time, the people who are there or who are not there. It's just truly a world to enter into, and you've been doing it for a while, and moving towards at least finish in this this stage of the story. But what has been your experience telling this story that is yours in this way for this long? Like, where is it at now for you, and how do you think about it?
Yeah. It's when I initially wrote, so basically the Skylark Bell is a series of 3 books, which I'm releasing each year. Each book takes up 1 year, basically, of the podcast, and 1 season. A season is basically a full year. And so when I wrote the first book in my head, it wasn't going to be, this was like 10 years ago. Podcast wasn't even on my radar. And I shelved it, and it wasn't that great. And when a friend suggested turning it into a podcast, and I realized that each chapter would be an episode, when you read a book, like, you want a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter, but it's not essential because you just keep reading. But if there's going to be a week between each chapter, you want those people to come back the following week. And I basically rewrote the entire book with that in mind, and had to add more suspense and more intrigue and more mystery. And it made the book so much better than it would have ever been if I hadn't turned it into a podcast. So that was huge. And then, when I write, I see it all plays out like a film in my head. And then I have to write and describe what I'm seeing. And so the comment I've had from a lot of people is, wow, your writing is really visual. When I'm either reading or listening to it, I can really see. And that's why. It's because before it's written, it's essentially a scene in my head. But to really convey that, words are great, but I think that's where the sound effects really come in. And there's not a boatload of them. They come in once in a while at key points when there's something that makes sense, like a door closing or gravel footsteps or a horse or whatever. And then also the use of like echoes or reverb in certain parts. There's an episode actually that just came out last Friday where one of the very few sound effects in the whole episode is this character, a really mysterious character. It looks at a different character and just goes, shh, and then vanishes into thin air. And that shh, I just bumped that reverb so high. And it's the creepiest, like 2 seconds of probably all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't take much, but you just add those little things that just like kind of make your spine tingle a little bit. Like, oh, and it's not gory or scary or even that unnerving, but it's just enough to kind of make you pay attention, I think. So that's been kind of the mindset behind producing this story. And really, ultimately, my goal is I want other people to kind of visualize what I was seeing before I wrote it down.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want other people to experience, because to me, what I'm basically watching a movie in my head, it's super cool. It's super exciting and awesome. And I want other people to see it, and short of finding, a scientific method to plug nodes on my temples and project it onto a screen, this is the next best thing. So that's what I've been trying to do.
And I've seen, I don't know how often you do it. I've seen, I don't know, it might have been watercolor or some of those visual pieces that you've done. When you do that, I'm just thinking about your process. You're talking about the process from the visual to the words or the audio. But how does that work for you when you're trying to paint? Is it a much different, more difficult, or easier process?
It's harder. It's harder for me because the things I see in my head, I can type and describe them with words, but to actually like do the right shape and put the line and the shadows in the right places and things, like that's more of a struggle for me. And I've had great friends who can like look at something and draw it and it'll look like a photograph. And I wish I could do that, but I can't. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. And now, excuse me. And now I work around those, I guess, faults or things that I can't do. And I think it makes my art kind of more unique. Because I don't let those things that I can't do stop me. Now I build on those. And so, I'm not good at drawing faces. I've got a bunch of drawings of faceless people. I call them the faceless people, and I wrote a song about it. But, like, instead of fighting those things that I can't do, I just roll with them now. And that is part of the beauty of getting older. But it's turned into a positive. So
well, I wonder that about. I really do deeply wonder about the can't do when it comes to art, and I just want to mention something. Like I've been in the situation because of practicing art and doing the podcast and being an artist, of just coming into kind of revelations, or honestly, the quick reveal that perceptions of myself were untrue and unfounded.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that discovery. And one really cool thing that happened, say 6 weeks ago, is as far as the depiction and the figurative, like me, like if you handed a picture of something to me and said, "Ken, do something with that," that's the can't do phase for me. That's the can't do. But what I've realized is that there's habits in the ways that this brain I'm pointing to has processed things or done things or trapped itself. And I was given by Susie DeVille, who's been on the show, this task in class of, it was an image, but it was just upside down. So you could tell what it was, but it was just upside down. And the instructions were that I could look at it, but just sketch it that way. Just you're sketching upside down. And I could do it so easily, where others were like impossible task. But for me, I don't understand it all. I could do it and do that and then see.
I like that you're touching on the brain difference and how it can pose challenges in so many situations. And all of a sudden you get in this other situation and it's like a top-notch strength.
By flipping the image, I almost immediately knew as one, pressure's off.
Yep.
Completely. And that was the big piece. The other piece was in ways I don't understand, because I've only done it a few times since I started doing it a few weeks ago. I did it yesterday, for example, with an upside down elephant. And I do it so there's less pressure on myself. And also, whatever's going on in my brain, I can understand the connections of the lines in a way where it's shown upside down that I can't see or be sensitive to when I see it the right way. And that's those neurons in the brain, again, I'm pointing to. Like, that's the things that are aligned in a certain way. And I guess what I'm saying positively, like, there are multiple paths. And the not being able to do is certainly, for me, become much more of a suspect thing to say, or for me to say. Like, I would tell you 2 years ago, I can't draw. And that's just not accurate. It's just not an accurate statement. It's also closes down possibility, because you've already stated that the thing is not capable. So next topic.
Right.
So excited about your live performance coming up. I wanted to chat you a little bit about your network of podcasts. I bumped into a lot of folks in the podcast network. My show's a variety show, so I hate that you might have to try to describe it to somebody, but you could say like there's some like true crime, there's spooky stuff, there's spooky paintings, there's weird painting, there's all these all these type of pieces and elements to the show. But I was just wondering from you, about working with a network, and where there's some other folks doing some spooky stuff and sharing that. I don't believe they're part of the network, or they might be. Mums, Murders, and Mysteries, our friends.
They are part of, they are part. We call it the Boo Pod Network, and they are part of that. And those ladies are amazing. It's a true crime. Well, kind of they true crime, but I feel like they've done some sort of eerie, unexplained stories too on their podcast.
I thought it was a life skills podcast. Maybe I've been listening the wrong way. Hey, Marty and Effie, just we got to have jokes. And folks, it's a great podcast. Mums, Murders, and Mysteries, covering
they are amazing.
Mostly like true crime, murders, mystery in Australia for the most part, and Scotland. So you have a interesting combo there. But tell us more about the Boo Pod and hooking up with some folks doing spooky stuff.
Yeah, well, I was invited into it by my friend Amy, who does a podcast called The Activity Continues. Actually, she's the one who. Actually, I wouldn't even have a podcast if it weren't for her. She's the one who said, you should take that book you're releasing one chapter at a time on Patreon and make it. Yeah. So Amy, thank you. Amy is she lives here in Minneapolis, and she's a dear friend, and she's just a lovely, lovely, amazing, hilarious, brilliant person, and I adore her.
There's so many cool people that live in Minneapolis, just to break in here, but go ahead.
This is true. So she one day said, I'm part of this network, and it's true crime and paranormal podcasts, and you want to be part of it, and I'll go ask. And I don't honestly know who within the network started it, because I came in where there were already people in it a little bit.
It's Oz.
And
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's what?
The Wizard of Oz. Some Oz.
Oh, there we go. It's the Wizard of Oz. So yeah, I came in when they already had kind of started, but basically it's a bunch of, and by a bunch, I mean, I think maybe there's a dozen of us, of totally independent people. Some of them work alone like me. Some of them are pairs like Mums, Mysteries, and Murder. And it's true crime and paranormal podcasts. Some of them touch on both. And basically, it started out with us each creating like a promo reel, like a 30-second or 1-minute promo reel for our own podcasts. And then we would insert each other's reels into each other's podcasts to kind of cross-promote and grow our audiences. And that was huge. And then over time, at one point, Halloween was coming up, and we said, hey, like, we're all doing kind of spooky stuff. We should collaborate somehow. And so we collectively, not every podcast was part of it that's in the Boo Pod Network, but I think there were 8 of us. And we just picked a topic. It was the Bridgewater Triangle, which, quite honestly, I had never heard of. And we each chose an aspect of that topic, and each released one episode on our respective podcasts in our own styles. And then the listeners could kind of bop around all these different podcasts and collect all the pieces. But what's interesting is I'm the only fiction podcast. And so at first I was really...
Yay!
Well, it was cool, but also like, how am I going to how am I going to do this? Talk about this Bridgewater Triangle area, which if listeners haven't heard of it, it's a super bizarre geographical area out east that has all the things. It has cryptids and ghosts and sects and devil worshipping and whatever, true crime. So eventually I landed on, I cooperated with a podcast called The Haunted UK, which is super phenomenal, by the way. And he covered a ghost story, a true ghost story, which is generally what he does on his podcast. And then I took that ghost, that character, and wrote a fictional story from his perspective. And that's what aired on my podcast. And he and I have now done a couple of collaborations like that, and it's been really, really great. But I never would have done a story like that if it hadn't been for that context and that kind of push of, okay, how are you going to problem solve this? You're part of this network. What you do is totally different. You need to somehow fit your piece of the puzzle into this puzzle. And so that's how I did it. And everybody in that group is, first of all, hilarious. They're all funny. Yeah. We all talk about terrifying, horrendous topics, and yet we're all funny and cool and nice. So it's been pretty great, and everyone's just trying to do their thing, and they're doing their best with the time that they have and the lives that they have, and everybody respects each other's boundaries as far as participation and what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
And it's great.
How do you, I'm just curious, how do you balance, knowing you, I would know that you'd have very, probably discreet, powerful ideas about how you want to do things. And of course, there's always the question of kind of working within the group, but then kind of massaging or moving around with that. What was that experience like? Because I would say for myself, looking at it, I would be like, I'm fine until I heard, I'd be fine until I heard something weird that hit me the wrong way. And then I get weirded out about it because there's an imposition, there's other people to respond to, there's another idea that's in my realm. Like how is that the balance, or did you feel that too much? Or
I haven't really felt that. I think, I think if I'm interpreting your question correctly, I think that I'm going to liken it to being an only child. Like, because I'm the only one doing what I do, how I do it within the group.
Yeah.
There's not really a competition, whereas somebody who does true crime and there wasn't just one, but let's pretend there was only one incident. Well, okay, who's going to do it and how are they going to do it? And are they going to overlap? And are they, I feel like that adds a different dynamic. Although everybody in there has been really kind of conciliatory and flexible and, oh, well, how about you do this piece and we'll take this from this angle? Or there hasn't been any conflict, even though everybody, I believe, in that group has their very clear ideas of what they do and how they do it and how they present their show to people, to their audience. There's just been no drama. It's really cool.
Can't sell any tabloids, but it does help.
We're boring.
It does help independent folks. Well, I think within podcasting, and it's something that I've learned just a lot about, and I'm very far from an understanding of podcasting as a whole. It's just I read about it, each day and do it, and you do it, and kind of keep an eye on what's going on. But I think it creates some interesting or unique opportunities to organize, such as, I'm an organizer. I'm a union organizer in my blood primarily, but an organizer amongst people. And I think when with art or the network that you're talking about, when people have true fun and enjoy listening to wacky stories and feel, I don't know, less alone. And then there's another show that's kind of like, that's like the wild cousin of it, but they're both lovely. Like this one's more calm, and I love her because like I need to talk to her to calm down. And then the other cousin's just like, yo, there's ghosts here. And but you feel that you're around this group. I felt that because I do a variety show, so you don't know from one week to the next what I'm going to do, but I can go to you or I can go to Mum's Murders and Mysteries. We did a live recently, for example, and I can like tap into the juice. Like I can't, like the questions I had to talk with Mums and Marty, I was like, can we talk about the Poltergeist film set and how cursed it was? Can we talk about and it was just a long list, and we got on, and I'm like, I'm excited to talk about all these things, but just to be able to vibe and even though you're not doing exactly the same thing and you're in different spots, that you're able to vibe for a while and be like, that shit's cool, man. That's fun,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a mutual respect based in partly we know how much work goes into it and how much effort, but also in just seeing like, oh wow, that person did that way. That's cool, and it's inspiring. I just think the inspiration has been huge and motivating.
The one I'd imagine, again, you might be sensitive to this, but some of the serendipity or the connections that I'm particularly sensitive to, like, and maybe as an organizer or sensitive to how people connect Like I just networked the entire thing of people in my head in terms of organizing and how, to use, but just to see how people could relate to other people like that. And it's just been so cool to see within podcasting, independent, do it yourselves. Like there's a reality to podcasting where people, I think anytime you get a new media, I think the jokes are actually stupid and funny about podcasting when you have a podcast, because it's something new to make fun of, but it is not reflective of reality. Because when it comes down to it, folks like you and I who continue to make podcasts over years, they're not very few. The number of podcasts drops precipitously of what is continually being made. So it's a serious form. And, our approach, though laughing and funny and we can hang out, is serious about what the intent is. And I think those who know about what podcasting is or can be, whatever you're using it for, whether it's politics or health or whatever, I think those who are doing it know that it's a powerful thing. At least I feel that. And the jokes are titillating, but that's all they are. Because
I agree.
And so, I mean, it should kind of point out the sustained effort, because I'm going to say something. I know, because there's been a few nights for me, even with that sustained effort, even with that love, and it's at 11:30 at night and you're looking and you're working on things. You're like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
So I hear you.
Oh, there's days where I'm like, man, I'm screaming into the void, and then I hug my dog and I'm like, but I'm going to keep screaming.
Yeah. And you're
back someday.
You're telling a weird, sustained, wonderful ghost story. And I'm asking people, why is there something rather than nothing? That's not, that's position you only stake out independently, I think. Okay. So I wanted to talk about a couple musicians we like. First of all, I wanted to say declaratively on the show that Polly Jean Harvey, PJ Harvey, is, well, she's a goddess.
Not going to disagree.
Through and through. I want to start light. You know what I mean? Like I want to start.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I've listened to everything Polly Jean has done. She's a philosopher. She's a multivariate artist, photographer, poet. The amount of instruments that she can play, all these type of things. These are things she can do. I found it to be the most amazing, brilliant music and catalog that I've been able to enjoy for a long time now, 30 years. And I know you really love Polly Jean. I wanted to talk about that and about some of the energy, just the sheer energy of some of the women in rock and in songwriting that you enjoy. I know Tori Amos, Regina Spektor, Polly Jean Harvey.
We love Amanda Palmer.
Amanda Palmer. That's why some big ones don't even get it. But what? Tell me about that, because I know we've vibed on that.
Yeah. I think so. I was a teenager in the 90s when PJ Harvey and Bjork was one, and Tori Amos and so many others. But that was kind of the trifecta at the time. And it was cool to see these women. So PJ Harvey's a little more rock, so she maybe fit in better with some of the male-led bands that were popular, even that I liked, Pixies and Nirvana and all those guys. And I loved all of them, and they were great, and they fulfilled something for me, and it spoke to me, and it was awesome. But then when I discovered, a few years into that type of music that I had started listening to, when I discovered the women who were part of that world, PJ Harvey was probably the most similar, but she's still really unique. And what I loved was they were each so different, and they were each so individual in what they were doing, in their sound. And it felt to me super strong and confident. Like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doing it like this. And you're either going to like it or not, and it's going to work or not, but this is what I'm doing. Whereas, when I saw that, and then I looked back at what I had been listening to with a lot of the male-led bands, which were great. Again, it's not a criticism of them, but to me, that was almost more of a homogenous sound. All those bands, I could kind of lump them together. You could tell them apart, obviously, but just overall, compared to these women that I was listening to, where, they were completely different from each other. And so I really gravitated toward that. And it took me a long time to start writing my own songs. I started out playing all of their songs,
Yeah.
And to see, I feel like I'm maybe going off on a tangent here a little bit, but
this show is tangents. This show is tangents.
Okay, tangents.
We're good.
That was, to me, a really pivotal time for women in music, when these women were coming up and doing this and being embraced and being criticized and laughed at also by mainstream, generally, media outlets about music. But overall, I think as far as just the human beings that were listening to their music, they were well loved. And then came, I won't name names, but female pop stars that were treated more like products, and the songs were written for them and outfits were picked out for them, and they were taught what dance moves to do. And that, took over and almost kind of washed away what I feel was progress.
Yeah.
And it's just been like an uphill battle since then. But I feel like there's a bit of a shift the last few years. And I know Amanda Palmer's been fighting that fight since she started. But I think it's important. I'll be honest, I go on iTunes. I still download music because I'm old, and also I feel like that supports the artists better. And Apple just put out like a Happy International Women's Day or something, graphic on Women's Day this year. And I thought, that's cute, because when I go to iTunes and I try to find women artists who write their own songs and perform their own songs, I have to dig so deep through the content that's in iTunes, because it's not on the front pages of any of the categories. There might be one or two, but there's like 25 male artists for every independent female artist. And I find that unfortunate and frustrating, but I think that it's also inspiring to see women just plow through, and keep doing what they're doing and keep building on it and having people gravitate toward it.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you had to say, and I there's a subtle point there that you mentioned I hadn't really thought about as much as like within Björk and Tori and Polly Jean Harvey. There's something you were talking about their styles and how uniquely developed and very particular and brilliant, but unique in particular about what they were doing. And I hadn't really thought about that in those terms, about how using them as three big, major, influential female artists at that time being truly distinct. And I think that can be exciting, because I would say in each of those categories, and which one do you point to more than the others between Björk or Tori or Polly Jean, is that there's a particular female brilliance and punk and bravado. And I will say what I need to say at the end of it. It will be said, whatever that is, that is extremely powerful. And I was around, I didn't connect with it at the same time, being a young 20s, guy. But I was around women who were very influenced and very empowered by that. And I think it's right to point it out as a particularly unique and with those artists noticeable development. So it was so funny when I was talking about that, like Björk as a thinker of sound. I've listened to her podcast where she talks about each of her albums and what's going on and the considered thought. And it's like, it's kind of like a peek inside creation. So
yeah,
love that stuff. Love that time. And they're all still putting out putting out music. It was another
They
thing. Like
are.
I had Sharonova on the show, who's sung with the Decemberists, who sung in many formats in collaborations in a group, My Brightest Diamond. Just a true honor, but to come in contact with kind of discrete intelligence and creativity in that way, there's the power that's in that. And I think that's what's exciting. Heck, that's why I have you on this podcast here. So
yeah. Well, I think what I gleaned from all those is just to don't be afraid of using your own voice. I think a lot of artists try to sound like other artists that they like, or they almost like hide behind like how many Eddie Vedders are out there, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a comment that I've received a few times now in more recent years about my songwriting is just, there's nothing, it doesn't sound like anything out there. You know, it sounds different than, and I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm me and I'm the only me and this is what I do. And I think that every artist should do that, you know? Everybody should just be somebody will love it somewhere. It's going to speak to somebody.
The word that I've been using my vocabulary for months, and I've just been trying to just be sensitive and notice certain developments, and it's been conspicuous all the time, whether it's what I'm trying to do or the people that I'm around or who's trying what. I notice the conspicuous effort, or when things are good, or something is really good and the times are tough. Like times feel super weird to me right now. It's felt so for a long time. And I think a lot of people that I talk to, just fucking weird. But just, there's these other areas where things are changing, but there's some openness, at least in my head. And you might say it's openness towards the apocalypse. All right, the sun's going to come out for a minute. Or you can say things are shifting and transforming, and things are not the way that they were. And other humans, I'm sure, have felt dealt and seen these trends, but we're in it. Something has shifted and something has changed. And I don't have the explanation, but I know as a subtext doing a podcast about art, that's how I'm surviving this shit. Honestly.
Yes.
Like deeply, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Same club.
No, yeah. I'd say the last 6 to 12 months, music has just been a lifeline, you know. And earlier in the pandemic, writing was the lifeline. I knocked out 2 novels and a half, you know. So I think creatives, when everything's going to shit, that is your lifeline, is creating or other people's creations, or a little bit of both, but definitely. Yeah, because you can, I think, shut out the world a little bit. Shut out the noise. Make your own noise. You know?
Yeah.
I'm tired of everybody else's noise. I don't want to hear all the arguing and bickering and stupidity. I'm just going to sit and write a song about snow, you know?
Well, I wanted to mention something about music, and this is a unique thought that I had, and I just wanted to mention it to you. I've adored the music of Catherine Paul, KP, Black Belt Eagle Scout, for some time. And her last album, I believe the title is At the Party with My Brown Friends. I might have that slightly off, but I listened to that album kind of like every day when it came out for like 3 months straight.
Nice.
So if I encounter an album that sets right in, whether it's mood or lyric or tone, if it's there 2 or 3 days, it might be there every day because I'm just like relying on it. And things are getting tough. And she dropped her album, which we saw the first day she performed the whole album live before going out on Europe. I mean, there was these things that just came together, which were partially planned. I did a podcast with it, but I listened to this album and I find it so strange because this is the thought I ended up with. I listened to this album every day for about a month now. And, my thought was, I can't imagine a world without this complete album in it at this point. Like, I truly felt, I'm like, as far as an album and an art piece and how I've used it for a month, I'm like,
Yep.
how was this thing not here before? And what was I doing then?
Yeah. I love that. And it makes complete sense to me. Yeah. It's kind of like when you have a kid, right?
Do you know what my longest streak is? I'll admit this. My longest streak of, dropping in and playing it every day. I don't know if the other people do this. And I don't do it all the time. But when I do it for a long, obsessive time. Was 1989 by Taylor Swift. Listened to every single day for 18 months.
That might be a record. That's impressive. And I'm the girl who will rewind and listen to the bridge of a song 18 times in a row. But wow, you win that prize, man. That's
okay. Well, that
great.
Places a little bit more in context with me. And thank you.
I like that.
If I'm the clear winner there, maybe I'll talk to somebody else and see how I fit in.
No, I think, I think if something speaks to you, another thing I noticed in the music world that doesn't seem quite as bad now, but I feel like there's a lot of judgment about what people like or don't like in music or what they listen to or, and it's so stupid because if something speaks to you, who gives a shit? Honestly, who cares? If something speaks, even Nickelback. I don't like Nickelback. Somebody likes Nickelback, and we can make all the jokes we want, but to that person, it's bringing something positive to their lives. And so I'm glad Nickelback exists for that person, And that weird thing about judging people for what they listen to is just, I've always thought was so bizarre. It'd be like judging people for what foods they do or don't like,
Well, it's powerful though for identity because I could say when I was younger, I grew up in the city and my parents moved to a better, wider suburb. Not that that's better, but within 1980s, how those things are looked at. And when I was younger in elementary school and middle school, I was culturally Black amongst my friends because I didn't listen to rock like my parents would, and I didn't not like it, but my music was early rap music, and it was a big part of my identity. So when we moved to the suburbs, and then there was this white culture, and this is before hip hop. This is before it's made it really into white culture fully. I was culturally Black by the music I listened to, and everybody was white. Everybody. This wasn't white time, white boy time to be cool, listen to hip hop or anything. This was there's white and Black. And I've always found at least early on, now I didn't look to live by that, but you're influenced when you're a kid. Even if I liked that Eagles song in my head and I knew I liked it when I was younger, I was being no, it's Run DMC. It's Run DMC, and it's just,
right.
It's a powerful force, I think. I think it maybe is. Do you think it's even more now with the predominance of social media? Do you think it's more of an exaggerated form of it?
Maybe. It's hard to tell. See, so my son is 14 now, and I look at him and his friends, and he listens to a lot of really varied music styles. And recently he was playing a Bjork song, and he'll listen to music while he's FaceTiming with his friends, or they'll listen to something, and nobody in his generation that I've seen has batted an eye at anything that anybody's listened to. They might give each other shit a little bit, but ultimately there's just this acceptance with them, with that, and it seems to englobe, and it could be geographical and political to where we live and whatnot too, in part. But I would say they are more confident by far than my generation ever was, and they are more open and accepting of differences also than we ever were. And it gives me hope with everything going on right now. It gives me a little bit of hope. And I know that, this isn't the case for every 14-year-old, and that there are probably parts of this country where 14-year-olds think very differently. But the fact that even in comparison to where I grew up and how I grew up, that they're so different and open about everything, from gender identity to music or whatever it is, it kind of is a lifeline for me too, to see that,
Yeah, there's a lot of questioning, and I think for me, just seeing that, as far as like younger generation, if there's one thing I really, really enjoy is that there's a lot of old, tired bullshit that they're casting out that I know I grew up with. Just nonsense looking back. So I've had an open mind about a lot of things that I hear, because what I've discovered when people point out big piles of BS around some of how things have been, how we define things, what this country is, just when somebody points out some BS, you got to deal with it sometimes, I think. And it's learning, right? It can be a little bit,
totally.
And,
I know. Well, just because something's been done a certain way for a really long time doesn't mean that's the best or the right way to do it. And I think we need to get some people to let it go. Let it go.
You've been doing some of the lives, Instagram lives. I love those. I started doing those this year with the show, and I enjoy it.
Yes.
I've been very pleased when I've asked folks to come on that they've been mostly really enthusiastic, which is kind of a reaffirmation of like, oh, this sounds fun, or this sounds cool to do, And I know you and I will do that soon. I love to be able to see you play a few songs. Well, primarily because they're your songs that I know and love, but they're also, when you do a cover, I might be like, oh yeah, that sounds super as well. I have a particular adoration towards French pop over time. It's just so groovy. It's so lovely.
It ages really well. It's like French cheese, right? French pop and French cheese, they both age really well. And wine.
I remember having that episode 150 with April March, and just those dance songs and all that.
Yeah.
And that song, her big famous song from Tarantino movie Chick Habit, that's on streaming now. They resolved some sort of like legal around that too. Yeah. And I saw that De La Soul, the band De La Soul, is streaming now after all that legal stuff. So anyways, there's some new stuff maybe to stream. Not promoting anything in particular, but new music sounds good, or reissued music. So what's the schedule on the podcast, and what's coming up, and what do things look like as far as Skylark Bell story?
Yeah, well, we're on book/season 3, which is the third and final book in the trilogy of this original story. And this third book is the longest. It has the most chapters, so it'll take probably, I think, every single week, probably well into October, before the story is complete. But I pre-recorded all the chapters already, and I'm uploaded already into June. And I did that on purpose because of those collaborations that I did within the BooPod network last year. I wanted to give myself the time and freedom to work on some collaborations like that. And so I'll, once the official story, the book, is finished, I'll still have more content to share, likely in collaboration. There's already a few things brewing with some partners. And I think, I had a lot of fun, and it pushed me, I wouldn't say out of my comfort zone, but it pushed me to almost problem solve creatively on some things. So that's super exciting. And then the other thing that's happened with me getting this out of the way in advance is one of the members of the BooPod network also has a music studio called Pink Flamingo Music Productions. And he and I have paired up to work on some music together, and it's been just lit a big spark, actually, and it's been really great. And I think the initial thing that I loved so much is that it made my music sound so much better, my music recordings. And so, so I think when I started out sharing music 4 years ago almost now, I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have recording equipment. And so it's been so incremental in building this thing and building the audience at the same time. So the ones who've been there from the start, I was putting out a crappy product in the beginning. And so kudos to them for sticking around. But, it's been slowly collecting these people and these with their talents and putting it all together. I have a friend, Eric in Montreal, who does these super cool videos and who's a multi-instrumentalist and is just brilliant. And my friend Jane out in Vancouver, she's a tremendous songwriter. And so we've all kind of meshed together, and I'm pulling pieces from these people, but the one missing link was making everything sound good. And now I have that. And so that's been super inspiring. And we've been working on music. So where I'm going with this is having the podcast totally pre-recorded and ready to go is giving me a lot of time and freedom to do all these extra things that are inspiring, and I think will help me build onto whatever the future of the podcast will look like once these 3 books have been shared already with the world.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And it's nice to hear how you're thinking about, laying things out. And I know you work on different projects, and I've felt, and because I know we've talked on your other podcasts, you've wanted to mention a couple, maybe the things that you think about within podcasting that you do as well. And because I know my guess or me knowing is like, with the fiction and those type of stories, you're also intrigued by some of the personalities and people that you're around too. So you love conversation as well, and so writing fiction being particular and time for conversation and that developing there. So tell the listeners how what other pieces you think about within podcasting format.
Yeah. Well, for a short period last year, I started a podcast. It was called Grab a Blanket. And you and I chatted on that podcast among a few other people. And the premise of it was to talk to people about things that bring them comfort. And I think that what sparked that was how uncomfortable the world had become at that point, just between the pandemic and specifically here in Minneapolis, we had, George Floyd and the riots, and it's just been it's just been tough and uncomfortable. And so it was a podcast to talk with people about things that bring them comfort. And what was so fascinating was how different everybody was. Some people, it was like, oh, I go take a walk in the woods. And some people was, oh, I cozy up by the fire with a hot chocolate, or, oh, I paint. And then this one woman, actually Annie Enneking, who's going to be at this, she's a musician. She'll be at the show next week with me. She is I want to say this correctly, but like a fight choreographer for like the theater. Like if there's fight scenes with swords or punching or whatever, like she'll choreograph the fights. And that's her like happy place, is like violence, structured violence.
Structured violence. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's, which I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm a pacifist. And so it was so foreign to me and fascinating. And, I love, being kind of a neurodivergent person, understanding other people is very, very hard for me. And so the way I get to do that is just by talking to them. When you can find someone who's open enough to do that, not everybody is.
Yeah.
And so that's what those conversations became about, was just understanding people's differences from me and from each other, obviously. But it was fascinating. It was really cool. I think I did maybe 7 or 8 different interviews, and each one was absolutely unique. It was awesome.
Yeah, they were quite unique. And that was a nice thing. I came to I usually kind of talk about some of the realizations. I remember doing that, and I remember facing some significant difficulties soon after that. But it was very revelatory for me to hear what I was saying. And part of the dynamic that I was hinting to, I felt like around that time, things are stressful. Things still felt stressful. And I'm like, kind of like, how do we hang on? And like in my head, it's like, it wasn't fully developed. It was like, I need the freaking colors of Christmas. I need my cookies. I need Hallmark movies. I'm going to say whatever I want that I need. I don't give a shit what any of you think about what are the things that I need. But
Totally.
But it was the lesson. The lesson was this for me, because the expectation of that arriving in the way that you expect it proved to be problematic for me. Meaning that the trials and tribulations I would deal through, the cycles of the year, intense work during the day tied to school schedules and things like that, is that I would be, just kind of, tied up in all of that. And it would be really intense. So I needed something to look forward to, as simple as it was. I think about it like seeing lights, like think about it in simple Catholic terms, or I can, a votive, soft, dull Christmas lights, presents, mythos and nostalgia, all that. Yeah, sure. But all those comforting type of things. And those can't always arrive like that. And I started to look at structure of my life. Okay, I need a good summer. When you need something, I need a good winter break. And I'll be like,
yeah,
I have to look at it differently from that. I need to veer towards that. But I also need to understand that my days in between, something has to happen differently there, because it ain't always working to go to the stores and the bank that you expect at the end of the year or at different times. If you have that opportunity, for some folks, it's constant, and there is no within that. And so things changed after that episode, but it was very much part of like trying to learn within that.
Yeah.
It was a strange experience, to be honest with you, but very good. I'm drawn to strange experiences. That's, Now, so you do your music. We got the Skylark Bell, and you didn't done that for a season. And you thinking of anything else related to podcasting? Just ideas, or just the music? We're gonna roll with the music. It's 2023 music year. Crank out some more music as the other.
Yeah. I have a very, very dear friend who lives actually not very far from my house, and her husband is a multidisciplinary artist. So he's a painter, phenomenal painter, and he's a musician, and he does movies. And I asked her, I mean, I know him too, but I hang out with her more. So I asked her, like, how does he navigate that? Because, if I'm in writing a novel mode or writing mode, period, that's what I'm doing. I'm writing books. Sometimes it's 2 books. Sometimes it's a bunch of stories. And then when I'm in music mode, that's what I'm doing. I'm writing songs. I'm composing. And I haven't found a way. Podcasting really helped mesh the two.
Yeah.
Once they're kind of done. But as far as doing them, and she said he's the same way. Like if he's doing a music album, he might still do some art on the side and some movies on the side. But like whatever the biggest project is, that's what is taking over his life in that moment. And that's how it is for me too. So right now I'm really in a music mode, and there's a lot of new songs coming. Good. And I think they're going to be really cool. But in the back of my mind, I have this like, the sand through the hourglass of this trilogy of books that's going to be ending. And I have to look forward to, okay, what's going to come. And luckily, within this BooPod network and some friends and connections that I've made in the podcasting world, there's some sparks there. There's some ideas and some connections, and some of it will be just me. I have a couple of ideas to continue the podcast in a similar vein, but different. It'll be different, but I think it will appeal to the same people. And then top it off with some collaborations with people that I click with. And I think that's what the future of the Skylark Bell will look like.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah.
When you did mention sands through the hourglass phrase there, I did drift off to Days of Our Lives for a few moments.
Absolutely.
I have
that's where I got that
I tried to get Deidre Hall on this show for episode 200.
I love her. She won't do it?
No, I mean, look, they haven't said no, so that's a potential yes.
Oh, well.
If I could get Marlena, Deidre Hall.
Can you imagine?
Oh, my mom, there'd be a lot of people who'd be proud of me. I'd be proud of them. So anyways.
I'd be proud of you. I would be proud of you.
Melissa and I, one of our calls out to a guest, Deidre Hall, and I think I do this once in a while, Taylor Swift, just to put it on record that there's the 8th or 800th time that I've invited her onto the show, just to have it out there, make sure there's record of these things happening.
Yeah, why not?
Taylor's going to end up on the show. I'm telling you, she's gonna. But she will someday. Well, the thing is, when it comes to like absolutely wildly talented guests and multitudes of them, that's a blessing for me with the work I've done on the show. I mean, it's an intentional climate of let's do something. And lately people saying, well, things seem like really messed up and shitty right now for a little while. Okay, let's do something. Let's try something. Let's put these two colors together and see what happens. So
I honestly, I love following your Instagram feed because I get to see, all these different people that you talk to. And I love checking out what they're doing. And what's so cool about your show is the commonality obviously is art, but art can mean so many different things. And you touch on all of them. And with all different people from all different walks of life and ages and backgrounds and, mediums that they use. And it's really incredible what you're doing. So I don't know. I'm glad you're here. Keep doing it.
Well, thank you. It's enjoy. I realize, there's realizations that I made one have to do with like how I've spent my adult life. And as a union rep, it's just a unique experience because I will have had tens of thousands of conversations with people who are usually in some aspect of distress or revelation or need because I still haven't got my call 23 years. Hey, Ken, how's it going? No grievances today. Workplace is very healthy and shiny. The floors look great. I'm happy. I just wanted to call you to thank my union.
Right.
It's just not the nature of things. I'm not complaining, but I think just tens of thousands of conversations and 75% of my membership being female, gender dichotomy here, but like statistically. So, and for other reasons, I've been forced into or paid for, or whatever way you look at it, conversations that are going to be, whoa, and they're right there. So only in developing the show, I've been able to see how I can try to do that or why. So it's been, thank you. It's a groovy thing for me personally. So, I know that you have some going to be doing some playing, some live pretty soon. You got some things going on. I wanted to just everybody was talking with Melissa Oliveri, and Melissa, I just wanted you to. You got different things that you're doing. Why don't you point the listeners to where to look for things and what you'd like them to see and hear?
Yeah. Well, the easiest is probably my website, melissaoliveri.com, because that has all the things. So start there. I'm very active on Instagram as well. So that's always a good place. And links to all my different platforms are on the website too. But yeah, Instagram's a really good one. I like to be in touch with people, and I feel like that's where I get the most engagement and connect with other creatives and other people who aren't necessarily creative but are just fun, interesting people. And then, of course, I have Patreon, which is a really great tool, and I get to put out so
You
much
do a
content.
fantastic job there. And just so folks
Thank
know, I
you.
mean, no, when creators are
Thank
on
you.
there and everybody's trying to do whatever they can, it's like,
Yeah.
it's light, it's neat, it's great stuff. There's a lot of, so anyways, if you have the opportunity and the chance to do it, yeah, definitely the Patreon for Melissa.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try to, try to give good value and provide good content, or at least like advanced content or behind the scenes stuff on there. And it's fun. It's fun trying to think about what to put on there too, and what people are gonna, what's gonna speak to them. So it's a great challenge. But I'd say those are my primary spots. And then of course the Skylark Bell podcast is available on all major platforms. And we're maybe not quite a quarter of the way into season 3 here, or maybe an eighth of the way. And new episodes come out every Friday. Literally every single Friday of 2022, I released an episode. I didn't skip one.
And
so
that's what I'm saying when I was saying up at the get-go about like, it's a funny joke that everybody's doing a podcast, but you're doing a podcast.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Doing it. Yeah. And music, I have some music out. There's a soundtrack to the podcast called Songs from the Skylark Bell, and that's out on all major streaming platforms and Bandcamp also. And on Bandcamp, there's a lot of stuff that's not on streaming platforms, so that's a good spot to check out. My stage name is Cannelle, which is French for cinnamon. And so that's where you'll find the music, is under that stage name. But with the music, I'd say the best is yet to come kind of soon. So I just released a song called Elliot Under Glass, which, again, Pink Flamingo Music Productions did a lot of work on that, including, lucky for me, adding some instrumentation to it, and it just knocked it out of the park. It's a really cool song.
It's a beautiful, it's a really beautiful song that you did there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super attached. Elliot was a character in a story, and I wrote the song about him, and I fell in love with him. So Elliot is out in the world now, and but along that same vein of that song, that vibe, and that songwriting, I've written a few songs, kind of in that mode recently, and they're being worked on right now, and I'm really, really excited and inspired. It's going to be pretty great. So stay tuned for the music stuff.
Love it. Thank you so much. I know you get a lot coming out, and I enjoy dropping in on that. Couple final points. Your Minnesota Wild hockey team has been playing very well lately, and my beloved Winnipeg Jets have been sliding horrendously. But my Boston Bruins, as you might have noticed, are having the most historic season in the history of
See, the trick is to not have only one team. You got to have two teams that you're rooting for.
I developed my hockey affinity as I got older, and then I realized, I need some cover. And I know one place, and we get along very well, but I know one place we would be at a Montreal Boston hockey game, no matter where it is.
The gloves would come off my friend.
I don't think that would go well, and I would read up on what the French swears are before that, because that's a different.
We'd have to sit at opposite ends of the state of the hockey rink, because
I've had stuff thrown at me in a brief time in Montreal as a Bruins fan at a nearby bar for just being from Rhode Island with my Bruins stuff up in Montreal.
You were playing with fire there. You're lucky that's all that happened to you. The French are expressive. They're expressive. They were expressing their displeasure to you.
I was shown the directions to a more accommodating venue a couple times. Be that as it may, but it's been just so delightful to chat and to catch up and to talk podcasting and music, and I know we'll be connecting around just kind of getting this art out there. I mean, I think there's a certain piece that I've come to be unapologetic about putting the art out there and why you're doing
Yep.
it, and because people are needing on it and are digging on it. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it sounds
Yeah.
like a better setup than most other setups there are in life. So it's good to create.
Exactly.
It's good to create.
It is.
So,
It's survival.
well, we'll see on, I'm sure, an Instagram live soon. And of course,
Yep. Hour and a half countdown.
yes. Oh my gosh. You just
Yeah.
keep rocking. It'll be interesting. Thank you for coming on to the show. Great pleasure to talk with you, Melissa Oliveri. It's nice to have you as a friend and a kind of fellow comrade in trying to do something independent. We both come from the spirit of Amanda Palmer and some of the things she had to say about a little bit of a fuck you kind of attitude. I'm going to push. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to say this thing is cool and I'm going to believe in it. So
Yep.
I'll trip going down that path if I'm going to trip.
I'll trip right alongside you, my friend.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Elliot under glass watches the world go by. Outside the window, the children play, while Elliot sits alone all day. Elliot under glass, snowflakes tangled in his hair. He wonders about the world out there. He wonders how it feels to hug, to laugh, to touch, to move, to have a conversation, to make someone laugh and make them smile again. Elliot under glass will never fall down and break a bone, will never break a heart, never grow old, never hug or love or touch or move or hold a lover's hand, have an argument, hear an apology, a heartfelt I'm sorry. them cry, argue and then apologize, make them laugh and make them smile again. Elliot, Elliot under the sky, Elliot, Elliot wonders why in this wondrous world outside so many people never try to hug, to love, to love, to cry, to argue and apologize, to hug, to love, to laugh, to cry, to live beside me, die under the sky.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing,